Hello everyone. We're sorry to be missing the Friends Open Day this year, but no doubt you're all having a fantastic time. We did miss last February's as well. Our winter travels took us to Kartong Bird Observatory in the Gambia, an opportunity which we just couldn't miss. Whilst we were there, we got to meet Emmanuel Giatta, seen here at the top of the slide. There he's freeing our boat, which had run aground on a sandbank. We were particularly excited to meet him, as he would soon be taking his first ever flight and joining us on Dream Island. We have a fond memory during an early morning Gambian mist netting session, watching Emmanuel zip up his fleece and pull on his woolly hat because he was chilly. The temperature had dropped to 24 degrees Celsius. We did wonder how he'd cope with the early spring weather on Skokholm, conditions that can be challenging even for us, more used to it. Our trip to the Gambia was a fantastic exploration of mangrove and scrubland, forest and reed beds, which saw us ring in amazing African birds we'd never seen before. What was even more magical was handling species with which we're much more familiar. Things like willow warblers, sedge warblers, nightingales, whitethroats and subalpine warblers, birds fattening up for their long migration north, which might even take them to Skokholm. Many of our mist nets traverse crocodile-occupied reed beds and open water where little-ringed plovers and squacco herons were feeding. We'd encounter both of these species later on in the spring. It was a trip which straddled over into early March, which meant that we didn't return to Dream Island until the 10th.
And so, the Skokholm year in 2024. We were greeted by a very slippy green jetty and male Wheatear F22, who was seemingly home alone on the island. This was a bird which bred at Crab Bay last year, but in the absence of other territorial males, and females for that matter, took up residence around the farm, living the life of Riley as he sang from the best herringbone walls. The following day saw the first 316 puffins of the year, and although there have been 2 earlier 3-figure day counts, this was the highest count to be logged so early in the season. A firecrest was found sheltering at Migration Rocks on a dank 14th, bringing some much needed colour to Dream Island. An arrival of over 2,300 puffins on the 16th led to the second earliest landfall ever, and hundreds of birds were wheeling around the Alice Williams replica above Southaven. It was quite humbling to think that this very scene of clouds of sea parrots weaving around an Alice Williams figurehead has been repeated for nearly 100 years.
Upon closer inspection, a metal ring found in the track above the old well was found to be inscribed with the words Buxton, New College, Oxford 002425. The inscription was quite different to that used on bird rings today, which are printed with the address of the British Trust for Ornithology or the Natural History Museum. We had found a similar metal ring before, but back in 2014, when Professor Chris Perrins quickly found a reference to these rings in the introductory pages of Peter Conder's Wheatear monograph. In this introduction, Conder records that metal for rings was in such short supply after the Second World War that pioneering ornithologist John Buxton had some specially made for use on Skokholm. It's quite possible that both rings, so the one from this year and the one from 2014, had been used by Peter Conder back in the day as part of his pioneering work on the Wheatear and their ecology. A little ring plover on the 17th, which looked particularly petite below the gulls roosting on North Pond, was the earliest Skokholm record by 10 days.
Another firecrest and a black redstart on the 18th were accompanied by an arrival of Wheatear, which finally brought some company for F22, who had been alone for 9 days. On the 19th, a singing stonechat accompanied a nest-building female near South Pond. It soon became apparent that there was a second singing male, and he too had managed to attract a female. It was thus just the 5th year with a nesting attempt by this species, and the first time ever that 2 pairs have bred here. Both pairs were very successful and managed to fledge chicks from 3 broods each. A record equalling number of chough pairs also bred, although the 5 pairs only managed to fledge 5 chicks.
April saw the arrival of Emmanuel from Katong and Howard from Bridgend, both on Skokholm for just over a month, and our 2 spring long-term volunteers, Judith and Gwennon, who were going to be with us for 3 months. We were also joined by a fine selection of work party volunteers and chefs. It was a cold, wet and windy start to the season, but Emmanuel acclimatised quickly. Luckily, he'd brought with him several pairs of gloves, a fluffy hot water bottle, and he soon became the man in charge of keeping the wood burner lit in Lockleys cottage. All hands once again took to the lime washing, with any loose sections scraped down and new coats being added. Following a busy delivery boat, bosun floor was prepared, scraped down and tiled. This the final guest bedroom to see the end of the painted concrete floors. Repairs were made to the Helgoland traps, and the interiors of the wheelhouse and cottage common room were decorated. Howard worked on finishing the inspection hatches on our new 148-box storm petrol wall at the farm, now imaginatively known as Petrol Station 2 or Petrol Station 11, depending on your understanding of Roman numerals. It was no easy task. It took a lot of precision measuring, lines of string and patience.
The wet weather continued to arrive, leaving areas of the island completely submerged, including many entrances to Manx shearwater burrows. A pied flycatcher feeding in the courtyard on the 6th was our earliest record by 4 days, and regular flocks of redwing resulted in more bird days logged than in any other April of the last 97 years. Huge news came from the Crab Bay hide when it was discovered that a puffin was incubating an egg behind one of the dark room one-way windows. We'll come back to this later on. The 13th dawned with a sizable arrival of blackcaps, which adorned every bush and sheltered spot on the island. The day count came in at an impressive 339 birds, 189 of which were taken from the Heligolands. The first squacco heron for Skokholm was found by Emmanuel at the well the next day. It flew to South Pond, where it spent the night before relocating to the base of an elder tree at Crab Bay during a howling northerly. There was a wood sandpiper on the 18th, and the first cuckoo of the spring on the 21st. Unusually, on the same day, a myotis bat was also found flying around, and we were briefly visited by a male house sparrow on the 22nd.
The first guillemot and razorbill eggs both appeared on the 26th. The guillemot egg was 5 days earlier than both the first of last year and the 2013 to 2023 mean, whilst the razorbill egg was 3 days before the first of last year and 1 day earlier than the mean. It turned out to be a record year for little ring plover sightings, with 28 spring bird days logged. Storm force gusts coincided with the arrival of a grey lag goose, this becoming only the 18th year with a sighting. Wet weather continued into May, with the island once again saturated, causing torrents of water to flow off the cliffs and onto incubating auks. These photos are from North Gully, where the outflow from North Pond cuts across the island and into the sea.
A colour-ringed whimbrel found on the 4th had been ringed as an incubating adult in northwest Iceland on the 17th of June 2021. We also received news that a bar-tailed godwit colour-ringed on Terschelling, Netherlands on 16th of May 2022, sighted on Texel, Netherlands on 30th April 2023, and present here between the 22nd and 28th last month, was back on Texel on 5th May. The first fulmar egg of the year was at Little Bay Point on the 11th, which is the earliest egg since this species colonised in 1967. Puffin fish deliveries into Crab Bay on the 12th were 12 days earlier than the 2013 to 2023 first fish mean, and 6 days earlier than the first of last year, a sign that it was to be an early puffin season. And we were excited beyond words on the evening of the 15th when a storm petrel was watched exploring Petrel Station 2 before it entered one of the boxes and began to sing. A nightingale ringed on the 16th was just the third to be seen here in the last 12 years, and a feral pigeon caused equal amounts of excitement, the second of the year but just the 5th of the last 12. A wood warbler on the 17th was only the 4th in our time here, and the first to be seen in spring since 1991. Back to the Crab Bay hide. So the puffin egg, viewed from the dark room, hatched on the 16th, and Rich was lucky enough to be watching the box when it did. Visits to try and see the chick, led by Judith and Gwennon, became a part of every guest visit in the summer. The dark room was renamed the Box Office by 2 talented guests who produced this cinema-style poster in honour of their experience. So here you can see an adult incubating its very small chick. And here is the chick, waiting patiently at the tunnel for its next fish delivery. The box office photos were taken by Stephen Hyam, who managed a very slow shutter speed in the darkness.
Drama arrived to Dream Island on the 26th when the oil tanker the Midnight Glory came worryingly close to the lighthouse as it attempted to recover a lost lifeboat. We nervously watched 3 unsuccessful attempts to lasso the boat, an effort which positioned the tanker so close to Dream Island that the voices of the crew could be heard. The lifeboat then drifted north before being pulled east by the tide and into Steep Bay. This shows the tracks of the tanker as it lost its lifeboat and then tried to retrieve it to the west of Skokholm. The lifeboat was battered against the rocks in a northerly swell, and as the hull began to crack, fuel leaked out into the surrounding water. Fortunately, the stormy sea conditions worked in our favour. They dispersed the fuel and kept rafting orcs away. We were obviously concerned that rats could have been on board, so a full biosecurity response was triggered. Trail cameras were put out on the cliffs above the wreckage, and additional tube stations were set up. 2 visits were made by Jinx, the conservation dog, and his handler Greg. To everyone's relief, nothing was found, and the wreckage was soon removed by John and Gareth Reynolds of Dale Sailing.
Back to the birds, and a European white-fronted goose at North Pond on the 27th was only the 4th Skokholm record of the nominate race, while 16 spotted flycatcher the following day was the highest spring day count since 1997. Into June, and a curlew sandpiper on the 1st was the first for 4 years. A mute swan the following day was only the 19th to be seen here, and a rosy starling on the 4th was the 8th for the island. As anticipated, following an absent year, lunar hornet moths began emerging from the willows at the well on the 14th. We later discovered that they were also breeding in the wheelhouse willows for the first time. A common rosefinch found at the well on the 15th was our 12th in 12 years, and a spoonbill was at North Pond on the 18th and on the 26th. A hooded crow on the 19th was the first since 2022, whilst on the 26th a pair of wood pigeon were watched nest building in the courtyard sycamore. This was the first nesting attempt for 16 years, and they would later go on to fledge 2 healthy squabs. Long-term volunteers Hayley and Kaylee joined us on the 1st of July. They took over where Judith and Gwennon left off. They proved to be a cracking team who helped to ensure that all of this year's monitoring work was completed to the highest of standards.
Last winter was spent wondering just how many Skokholm seabirds had been involved in the avian influenza-driven auk wrecks of July 2023. The mass early season auk returns suggested that guillemots had been most heavily impacted, particularly in the vicinity of North Gully, where a single dead adult had been seen in 2023, on a ledge during the period that chicks were jumping. This photo is the colony in 2022, with guillemots marked with blue dots and razorbills with orange dots. Pay close attention to the central area. So this is the same colony in 2024. The ledge where the 2023 dead adult was found was virtually deserted during 2024. A localized loss of approximately 238 birds, and you can see there how the vegetation started growing back where all the birds used to nest. Pleasingly, similar losses were not seen elsewhere on the island. Indeed, small increases in most other areas meant that a whole Skokholm mean count of 4,989 guillemots on ledges was down, but only by 3 on last year. The vast majority of razorbills also seemingly avoided the disease. This year's whole island mean count of 4,333 adults being a new record, up on the 3,965 of 2022. It's amazing to think that the first count of more than 1,500 did not occur until 2013. Although numbers continue to increase, razorbill productivity, as monitored in the plots, remains surprisingly low. The 2024 figure of just 0.49 jumplings per pair, almost matching the mean for the last decade, which is 0.51. Although rough early season weather impacted the puffin counts, the area occupied by birds continues to increase. The whole island count must remain in the vicinity of about 12,000 birds. At our study plot in Crab Bay, 75% of monitored pairs seemingly fledged a puffling. This virtually the same as the 2013 to 23 mean, which is 76%.
The Fulmar population remains stable, with a whole island mean of 198 occupied sites, being 3 up on last year and very close to a 2013 to 2022 mean of 201. Productivity was bad though, with just 0.41 fledglings per pair. This is the poorest since 2013 and down on the mean of 0.52. Small chick losses to ravens and great blackback gulls no doubt played a part in this. Study plots suggested that the estimated population of 89,000 pairs of Manx she otter remained stable, while 72% of pairs fledged a chick. One of these chicks, which was last seen in Crab Bay Study Burrow number 26 on the 26th of August, was found on a beach 5,763 miles away in Brazil just 43 days later. Its wings were still growing when it was last seen on Skokholm, meaning that it probably made the journey in something closer to 35 days. There was fantastic news from the original petrol station, where a record 12 pairs produced eggs, this resulting in a record 7 chicks, whilst island-wide 75% of monitored nests fledged a chick. There was also exciting news from Petrol Station 2. 10 of the 148 nest boxes appear to have been visited by storm petrels, and 1 contained an egg stage failure. The original petrol station contained 4 egg stage failures in its first year, Stormies seemingly doing poorly in their first year of breeding.
July was a busy month of storm petrel ringing and puffin firtling, peppered with other exciting encounters. A wood sandpiper, which alighted briefly at North Pond on the 13th, was the first of 3 autumn records, which included the latest ever Pembrokeshire sighting on the 4th of November. During the month, it also became apparent that the ring linnet pair had 3 fledglings in their care. This was only the 4th time that breeding had been confirmed in 100 years, with the other records being in 1929, 1997 and 1998. A kingfisher on the 29th, sat on the rocks in Southaven during a guest changeover, was only the 19th to be seen here, and the 20th would be logged from the same location in September. A marsh harrier was the first of a record 39 autumn bird days. Into August, and a sanderling feeding at North Pond on the 4th was a Skokholm scarcity, whilst the Balearic shearwater, which cruised west with thousands of Manxies on the 7th, was the only 2024 sighting. We nipped off for a mid-August holiday to Canna and Rum, leaving the island in the capable hands of Wendy James and Richard Dobbins. As August progressed, it became clear that a record 2 pairs of water rail had bred around the well.
The wild weather made for challenging birding, but on the 27th a red-backed shrike appeared at Eastbog. This was the 28th Skokholm record of this species and the first August sighting since 2016. It moved to Orchid Bog on the 29th, where it lingered until the end of the month. An olive tree pearl, flitting about in the quarry, interrupted a search for storm petrel chicks on the 31st, and although just the 9th to be seen on Skokholm, a further 8 moth days were logged during a record-breaking autumn for this smart immigrant. And now down to the bottom 2 photos, into September, which kicked off with just the second 4-spotted footman since 1937, and the third ever blood vein. Three winchat patrolling the ragwort at South Pond began a record-breaking autumn for this species, and a total of 120 bird days were logged, which included a peak count of 10 on the 7th. A leucistic swallow chick was found in the red hut nest during ringing, and once it fledged it caused quite a surprise every time a silver hirundine flitted by. Chris Ward and his team arrived on the 4th to install a new solar system at the farm as part of our Sustainable and Resilient Islands project funded by UK government. The new system has 4 times the capacity of the old one, and it also tells us exactly how much power we are generating and also how much we're using. We're so impressed by its efficiency that we're hoping to replace the wheelhouse and lighthouse systems when funding becomes available. A diverse fall of migrants on the 6th began with a young barred warbler pictured here, which was our first since 2017 and just the 20th Skokholm record. It was joined by 13 species of wader, including a flyover dotterel, whilst a spoonbill on North Pond was the third of the year.
There were at least 10 tree pipits, and the 12 yellow wagtail logged was the highest day count since 1988. The excitement continued the following day, with migrants everywhere and the near constant calls of birds overhead. A minimum of 47 spotted flycatcher was the highest day count ever recorded on Skokholm, with the previous highs of 40 logged in May 1958 and in August 1964. Willow warblers were the most abundant grounded migrants, with 150 logged, 105 of which were ringed, whilst 3 grasshopper warblers, 12 sedge warblers, a garden warbler, 31 blackcaps and 24 chiffchaffs passed through, along with 20 tree pipits, 5 yellow wagtails, 10 windchats and 4 pied flycatchers. A dotterel was again present, an osprey steamed east, and the moth trap produced the first ever anomalous for Skokholm. On the 8th, 2 convolvulus hawk moth were taken from the trap, including this monster, which weighed in at just over half a yellow-browed warbler. As we made our preparations for the start of the autumn work party on the 13th of September, a marsh warbler turned up in a mist net. This just the second for Skokholm and the third for Pembrokeshire. It also had Dobbins contributing more money to the tixture.
The autumn work party ran until the 20th, a remarkable week during which a huge amount was achieved. One of the big jobs of the week was tiling the library floor, a room which first had to be emptied before the floor was scraped and levelled, ready to receive the tiles. Alongside this, the lighthouse generator and the 2 vehicles were serviced. The central block porch roof supports were swapped out, exterior glosswork was painted, Manx shearwater nest boxes were made and installed, the Orchid Bog hide was renovated, and the dam there was repaired. Howard boxed in a new hot water cylinder at the obs, the latter designed to increase our hot water storage capabilities. And here is the library post-reconstruction. The Friends have just purchased over £300 worth of new books to help update what is a fantastic resource for visiting naturalists. A juvenile long-tailed skua heading west past the lighthouse on the 16th was the first since 2017. 2 firecrest on the 17th were the first of 11 autumn bird days, and the morning of the 19th saw a juvenile Sabine's gull lingering off the lighthouse. That evening, a juvenile pallid harrier was found hunting over the bog, pictured here, which was just a third for Skokholm and a fourth for Pembrokeshire. It was seen scavenging at the remains of Manx shearwaters and stayed until the morning of the 21st.
The 22nd brought the 36th common rosefinch for Skokholm, where it was hanging out at the farm, and the moth trap produced the second ever white point on the 23rd. Despite a southeasterly wind in excess of 50 knots and lashing rain on the 29th, Steve decided to put his moth trap out, and it held 4 Radford's flame shoulder the following morning. The first Welsh record was on Skokholm on the 2nd of June 2022. The second was in Mark Burton's Marlowe's Garden in October 22, and the third was here on the 27th of September last year. Incredibly, we would go on to log a further 21 Radford's flame shoulder over the next few weeks. The first yellow-browed warbler of the autumn was on Iswian Heath on the 3rd. A further 4 would be logged, though this was trumped by a stunning young red-footed falcon found by Giselle at the lighthouse. This was only the second for Skokholm, following a male in May 1975. It's a rare bird in Wales. Indeed, there are only 21 previous records, and it's even scarcer in autumn. In fact, there's only 2 previous Welsh autumn records.
Two barnacle goose on the 9th occurred as part of a large movement of tracked Greenland birds which overshot Ireland before looping up through Wales and west to their usual wintering grounds. A southbound grey egret on the 10th was just a 5th for Skokholm, and another was logged on the 14th. A Siberian chiffchaff in Crab Bay and a snow bunting on North Plain on the 22nd were the first of the autumn. A corncrake which flushed from East Bog on the 24th was the latest Skokholm record, following one on the 14th in 1971, and only the second to be seen in the 21st century, following one in September 2022. A raucous flock of 486 jackdaw which blackened the sky on the 27th added to the resident flock of 32 in the quarry and produced a record day count. And then just the 5th gem for Skokholm was attracted to torchlight as we walked home on the 29th. The 6th gem, this time a male on the bottom right, was attracted to a lit window at the lighthouse the following day.
November began with a stunning juvenile white-rumped sandpiper on the 2nd, a bird which circled the island before settling down on Winter Pond. This was the first Skokholm record of this tiny North American wader, and just the 3rd for Pembrokeshire, following birds in 1977 and 1991. A goosander flew low over Howard's End on the 3rd and briefly landed on North Pond before being chased off by a male shoveler. This was only a 4th for Skokholm and the first to be seen ashore. Untypically calm November weather kept producing records, with the woodcock on the 5th, which was the first of the autumn. A vocal Richard's pipit flew around the lighthouse on the 12th, this attracting the attentions of a merlin, but it did seemingly escape, although we didn't see it again. The merlin didn't seem to have anything in its talons. And then the first Pembrokeshire record of magpie inkcap was found by Giselle at the Old Well on the 13th, this bringing to an end yet another excellent season of interesting records on the island.
We will end this year's talk with the Skokholm Tix jar. For those of you who have never had the pleasure of encountering such a jar, it is a bird observatory tradition in which people who see or ring a bird species which they have never seen before are encouraged to make a donation. This year, a fantastic £1,138.10 was raised. The Tix Jar has funded all sorts of good stuff since 2013, things which help make the Skokholm infrastructure so special. Everything from books to ringing equipment, from UHF radios to blackout curtains for the bedrooms, from stools for the Crab Bay Puff and Hide to the new infrared storm petrel viewing setup, and from pictures for the walls to the sound systems used on those special nights of storm petrel ringing. Now, the reason we can't be with you today is that we are currently here on Ascension Island, building petrel nest boxes here for these guys, the St. Helena band-rumped petrel, which only breeds on St. Helena and on this tiny offshore island called Bosun Bird. So sorry we can't be there, but thank you for listening to our talk today.
And yeah, we'll hopefully see lots of you on the island next year. This year. It's this year. It's 2025.
Whoa.
Happy New Year.